the SIPC question of do I file, and when I file, if there's some very good evidence that I'm not going to collect anywhere near $500,000, can I cap it off? Can I convince IRS that I only had an expectation of getting $100,000? Can I deal with that? Then some are going to have numerous other sources of recovery. There may be 500 people that have legitimate lawsuits against feeder funds, and they're going to have kind of their own common elements. We found that a lot of people need to understand that if they don't have tax basis, they need to really look only to their other sources of recovery. Because if you haven't lost money that you've paid tax on, you're not going to be able to use those losses to get taxes returned to you. So money that's been put in IRAs, never subject to tax, there you've got to pay attention to to Steve's side of the ledger and how many people can he sue to get your money back, and don't really put a lot of time and effort into the tax side. And then like I say, there seems to be a lot of estate tax versus income tax issues arising, because this really was the Madoff investment was the one you never touched. All right, the Madoff investment was
because it was paying 12% a year.
Exactly, the Madoff investment was the investment that you would pay taxes on. All right, with your other money, okay, and leave Madoff intact. The Madoff was the one that, if you wanted to increase your living standard, you might even borrow against it. All right, but never touch the Madoff account and then pass it on. You know, what better inheritance could you pass on?
That was a good point. You could, there was a time period there you could borrow at 7% and still be paying 12%. So
yes.
You have to wonder how many people actually took loans. We went to break. We were talking about, among other things, you know, you alluded to was the concept of abandoning a claim. You know, and,
right.
and that may be, for some people, the best strategy in dealing with their taxes.
Yes, there is some case law, and it actually, in the regulations, they say this is how you can add finality and say, yes, for sure, I have no chance of recovery, so therefore give me my theft tax loss. And that is by abandoning a claim. There's going to be a lot of unexplored territory as we file amended returns. You know, for example, and I believe these things can be done, and I believe that the case law is advanced enough to pave the way to allow us to take these positions. But can a good forensic accountant come in and really take all the facts about your SIPC claim and give you an opinion that says you're not going to get more than $100,000, and something that you can rely on? If that's the case, maybe you make arrangements to abandon all of your SIPC claim above $200,000. And now, does that work? Does that put you in a position of saying, in 2008, all right, I knew that there was nothing there in SIPC that was a big deal. I followed it out in 2009, and that's all I thought I was going to recover. So there's going to be so many, like I say, permutations of how to deal with these things.
And I assume that you believe that the IRS won't step forward and say, this is how we want you to handle it.
Well, I know one thing has been tried that didn't work because it wasn't tried the right way, was to try to go through IRS, through ex-Governor Pataki's law firm, and get special treatment or something. That's not the way you do these things. I think that if enough people kind of are centered in a few places, and there's enough tax communication going on among professionals, you'll probably get 3 or 4 groups that will want to go ahead and seek Internal Revenue Service rulings. That's the way you clarify these things. I don't know if you're going to get like an IRS task force for 8,000 people.
Right.
That'll come
It's
out.
no broad statement.
Yeah.
But one of the things that all these people also have in common that are caught up in the Madoff scandal and other scandals is tremendous anger, at the federal government, at the SEC. We talked about it in the past and during one of the breaks about, it seemed as if hands were off of Madoff and other, of these scandals, the leaders of these scandals, simply because they had reputations. I think people, that have been caught up in it are legitimately angry and want to recover from the SEC for not doing their jobs. But they have sovereign immunity. Is there any opening there to, actually confront the SEC for sitting on its hands?
Let's just say I would never take that case on a contingency basis.
Okay.
Now that would be an extremely difficult position to take.
Right.
And as you point out, overcoming the sovereign immunity limitations means that it's not cost effective for anyone to pursue. I think perhaps if there's a value to the public outcry, it's that it may help with lobbying Congress to authorize more money to SIPC, so indirectly the government will find a way to participate in compensating for those injuries.
It seems to me that would be at least the honest approach, because in reality, a lot of these scandals were just caused by institutional intimidation of the SEC and their employees just not following up because of that intimidation, where they should have been the watchdogs that were, looking behind the scenes and digging into the accounting. So lobbying your congressmen, your senators, your representatives, for a bigger liability for SIPC is probably the only thing you really can do.
I think it's certainly easier to get dollars that way than running into court against the federal government.
Right. You're caught in the Madoff scandal or one of these other scandals, and you're thinking about going back for the 3-year provision. It's really important because we don't know whether the tax code's going to change. You mentioned that you can carry forward a loss for 20 years, but that assumes the same tax code.
Well, they may get a break in that there may be a 5-year carryback that's in this new tax law, and it may affect the theft loss also. I haven't really fully studied it, but
another reason to delay really filing a permanent tax return for 2008.
Yes, and the other thing I wanted to mention, there is not just weighing your recoveries, but a lot of creative thinking can go into the forward-looking aspect of this. I mean, if all these tax losses are not used up, carrying them back, you're going to have a lot of people with billions of dollars of tax loss carry forward. Right? That means a lot of situations where maybe people who are not making big income anymore with the loss of Madoff have all kinds of unused tax loss. There's so many things that need to be thought about to take into account all of these different ramifications.
I mean, that's why it's so important to put yourself in the care of a professional tax attorney, perhaps a professional litigator, before you make the decisions and to plan this out.
I think the team approach is the only approach, because you need an accountant to schedule out. I mean, you almost need it like a chessboard. But what if I go after these 3 sources of recovery? How much of this tax loss is left? And then this one's not as good a source of recovery, I go after this one. All these things need to be placed in front of a client, and so percentage differences in every year. What if Obama's tax rates go up to 50%? All right, with all the debt that goes on, then your tax deduction's even more valuable. So.